Today, Donald Trump and his weekend cable news host turned Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth addressed the hundreds of top military brass they had abruptly ordered to Virginia in a 45-minute partisan speech to the nation's top commanders. Hegseth lectured them on fitness and grooming. He railed about so-called woke standards, and he declared that under his leadership, the department would end the, quote, war on warriors.
The military has been forced by foolish and reckless politicians to focus on the wrong things. In many ways, this speech is about fixing decades of decay, some of it obvious, some of it hidden. You might say we're ending the war on warriors. I heard someone wrote a book about that.
The last part was a completely unctuous plug for himself there, just in case you missed that. I'm sure you didn't. Because Hegseth, of course, did write a book in 2024 titled The War on Warriors, which he just plugged in the speech. And in that book, Hegseth argued at length that the United States military should ignore the Geneva Conventions and other elements of international law governing the conduct of war. He wrote, quote, "We are just fighting with one hand behind our back, and the enemy knows it. If our warriors are forced to follow rules arbitrarily and asked to sacrifice more lives so that international tribunals feel better about themselves, are we just better off winning our wars according to our own rules? Who cares what other countries think?" It's really missing the point entirely. Now, the book followed years of Hegseth advocating for U.S. service members accused or convicted of committing atrocities and war crimes. In 2019, that advocacy helped lead to Trump issuing pardons or reversing punishments for 3 men, two of whom had been turned in by members of their own platoons. And today, Hegseth reiterated his extreme view that United States forces should prioritize intimidation and lethality over law.
We also don't fight with stupid rules of engagement. We untie the hands of our warfighters to intimidate, demoralize, hunt, and kill the enemies of our country. A few months ago, I was at the White House when President Trump announced his Liberation Day for America's trade policy. It was a landmark day. Well, today is another Liberation Day. The liberation of America's warriors, in name, in deed, and in authorities. You kill people and break things for a living. You are not politically correct and don't necessarily belong always in polite society.
Now, part of what makes Hegseth's comments particularly chilling is that immediately after he stepped off the stage, up came Donald Trump.
I'm thrilled to be here this morning to address the senior leadership of what is once again known around the world as the Department of War, like what I call the Gulf of America, because to me it was always the Gulf of America. And, you know, we want war because we want to have no wars, but you have to be there, and, you know, sometimes you have to do it. I have settled so many wars. I love Space Wars because that was my creation. You know, when you create something, I love it, and the people we put in there were good. I got that right. Actually, I love my signature. I really do. Everyone loves my signature. We won every swing state. We won the popular vote. I'm a very aesthetic person, and I don't like some of the ships you're doing aesthetically.
Now, you would think that if he thought about calling all of the military leaders around the world to Quantico, Virginia, he could have at least written a comprehensive speech. It's not what he did. Now, in the midst of all of that nonsensical babble, some of which we just showed you, some of what Trump said today to our nation's military leaders was also incredibly alarming, including this.
While America is under invasion from within, we're under invasion from within. No different than a foreign enemy, but more difficult in many ways because they don't wear uniforms. At least when they're wearing a uniform, you can take them out. These people don't have uniforms. But we are under invasion from within. I told Pete we should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military, National Guard, but military.
Joining us now is retired Lieutenant General Russell Honore, who served 37 years in the United States Army. General Honore, when you hear the president refer to a war from within, and where he names cities to send the military into, refers to cities as training grounds, what goes through your mind?
It had a chilling effect when I heard him say it. I know he often repeat things like that in front of his mega base, but this was a chilling effect as a pronunciation of a new strategy to use the U.S. military to go into cities and fight mock wars in practice to go fight real wars against American citizens. I'm not quite sure the president has full understanding of the words he used, but I also know he was looking at a bunch of warriors who understand their rules under the Constitution and Title 10 of the U.S. Code that describe the actions of the armed forces.
One of the things that was striking is that when he gathered all these people, he had people come from around the world for a 45-minute political speech, essentially, 4 stars, 3 stars, 2 stars, 1 stars, to come to meet in Quantico. A meeting like this has little, if any, precedent. Tell me if I'm wrong here. But what do you make of what you've heard out of it today?
Well, I think, to use the old Louisiana term, I'm not sure if the squeeze was worth the juice. For the effort to bring these leaders from all around the world, from the very important commands fighting a campaign, protecting NATO airspace, supporting the war in Ukraine, the war in Gaza. 2 days before this event, 3 days before this event, we had Russian airplanes off the coast. We had a cyber attack in New York, and we're on the eve of a government shutdown. It appears the timing bad, as well as the message didn't meet the mission to bring them there to get a strategic change of mission. And some of the things that the secretary said was using his personal book as a field manual on how we're going to fight in the future, and his favorite talking points from Saturday morning television. So the generals and sergeant majors responded the way you would expect him to respond in a formation. Unlike when the president speaks to his base, there's a lot of clapping and yelling and hoo-ha-ha. None of that happened, and I think it had an impact on his delivery because he was looking for his jokes to land. Many times it sounded like a dated comedian on a Las Vegas stage who jokes just not landing. And he keep trying to land something to get a ha-ha or a clap, and it didn't happen. You don't get this in a formation, because what they had in the auditorium was a formation that stood up to attention when he walked in, so there's no clapping. And when he left, they brought him back to attention, and you don't clap when you're standing up. I think it kind of caught him off guard. And sometimes when the secretary was talking, he sounded like an amateur musician starting to believe his own magic, quoting his own book as a warfighting manual. This is most unusual, but I got confidence in those generals and those sergeant majors. They're going to go back and they're going to execute Title 10 and U.S. Code, keep the troops focused, train them. And those who got a little extra weight on them, they better get on some Ozempic, get it moving, lose it or lose it.
One of the things that Secretary Hegseth also talked about is rules of engagement. He called them kind of silly or unnecessary, and he seemed to distort what they actually mean. Why are they important, and what do they actually mean? Why are they important to have the rules of engagement that military leaders have had for so long?
Well, the war on terror, this long expanded war in Afghanistan and Iraq that we fought, was fought in among the civilian population. And it took extensive confirmation before targets were hit indiscriminately. Because you know what? When we didn't get it right, the world knew. When we bombed somebody who we thought was a bomber, even looking at the Afghanistan withdrawal, we did a bad target. And we hit a man and his family in a car delivering food for NGO because maybe we didn't follow the full rule of engagement. That's why we have rules of engagement, is to ensure and verify, and the responsible commander know once he get that order, they're responsible for it. And the soldiers on the ground need to know you just don't go shoot everybody in the village. And in the war on terror, that was a very important tool that was used to limit the casualties of non-combatants.